Cheerful sunny yellow is an attention-getter. While it is considered an optimistic color, people lose their tempers more often in yellow rooms, and babies will cry more. It is the most difficult color for the eye to take in, so it can be overpowering if overused. Yellow enhances concentration, hence its use for legal pads. It also speeds metabolism. Although it is difficult to take people back to the moon, it is not impossible. We can transport people, but the logistical challenge of keeping them there is a very different thing. However, we have two of the components necessary to make this work: power from the sun, and the minerals on the moon itself. Exhilarating, exhausting and intense. There are just some of the words used to describe doing an MBA. Everyone's experience of doing MBA is, of course, different through denying that it's hard and a demanding work whichever course you do. MBA is one of the fastest growing areas of studying in the UK, so that must be a sustainable benefit against form in one pain. Scientists studying brain scans of people who were asked to come up with inventive uses for everyday objects found a specific pattern of connectivity that correlated with the most creative responses. Researchers were then able to use the pattern to predict how creative other people's responses would be based on their connections in this network. In 2016, the world's largest ever data leak, dubbed the Panama Papers, exposed the scandal, uncovering a vast global network of people, including celebrities and world leaders, who used offshore tax havens, anonymous transactions through intermediaries and shell corporations to hide their wealth, grow their fortunes and avoid taxes. Prolonged exposure to loud noise alters how the brain processes speech, potentially increasing the difficulty in distinguishing speech sounds, according to neuroscientists. Exposure to intensely loud sounds leads to permanent damage of the hair cells, which act as sound receivers in the ear. Unions take the power out of the employer's hands on many issues. There are examples of cases where workers were engaging in sexual or racial harassment, but were protected by their unions and allowed to keep their jobs. Poor workers and excellent workers often receive the same pay and raises, giving no reason for a person to work harder than necessary at their job. Imagine living all your life as the only family on your street. Then, one morning, you open the front door and discover houses all around you. You see neighbors tending their gardens and children walking to school. Where did all the people come from? What if the answer turned out to be that they had always been there, you just hadn't seen them? The definition of a disaster varies by organization. Various entities have different pain thresholds that define when an incident becomes a disaster. The bank, for example, will have different criteria than a poison control hotline. With this fact in mind, any organization should begin the process of implementing First Alert. Today, however, Skinner's heirs are forcing the skeptics to think against the article. Backed by billionaire techies such as Mark Zuckerberg and Bill Gates, schools around the world are using new software to personalize learning. This could help hundreds of millions of children stuck in dismal classes. London's National Portrait Gallery is currently celebrating the 50-year career of photographer Sandra Lousada. The 21 portraits on display depict key figures in literature, film, and fashion from the early 1960s. Subsequent to the acquisition of 40 portraits by Lousada, the display at the National Portrait Gallery highlights shots were taken between 1960 and 1964. Perhaps the most memorable benefit of the program has been the opportunity to meet in small groups, something that is difficult to arrange such a desperate organization. Many officers would have to work together for 30 years but would not know others' strength and weakness. We all know that too much information can be a bad thing. This is as in daily life as it is in business. Filtering useful from useless information has become a growing problem, bringing confusion with it. But this is where data curation can help. Curating data involves finding and displaying patterns in large volumes of disconnected and messy data to create meaningful information. European wildcats, thought to be extinct 50 years ago in the Jura Mountains, have since recolonized part of their former territory. This resurgence in an area occupied by domestic cats has gone hand in hand with genetic crosses between the two species. A team of biologists modeled the interactions between the two species. The sad truth is that happy sounds are infectious. Now comes research that at least partly explains why. It was published this week in the Journal of Neuroscience. The British research team played various sounds including laughter to people who are having their brains scanned by a functional MRI machine. The global collapse of frogs and other amphibians due to the amphibian chytrid fungus exacerbated malaria outbreaks in Costa Rica and Panama during the 1990s and 2000s, according to new research. The findings provide the first evidence that amphibian population declines have directly affected human health and showed how preserving biodiversity can benefit humans as well as local ecosystems. At the end of this year, we will launch the Cup class boats. So these will be about twice the power. The sailors are down in cockpits, unlike today. A lot of the power is being generated by these four grinders that are providing hydraulic power, and that energy is being used to control the flying surface. Participating regularly in physical activity has been shown to benefit an individual's health and well-being. Regular physical activity is important in reducing the risk of chronic diseases, such as heart disease and stroke, obesity, diabetes and some forms of cancer. The National Physical Activity Guidelines for Adults recommends at least 30 minutes of moderate intensity physical activity. Traditional divisions of domestic work are understood to persist because of the strong association of the home with humanity and pay work. To challenge who does what in the home is arguably tantamount to challenge what it is to be a woman or a man. The disease model remains dominant in the U.S. because of its stakeholders. First, the rehab industry, worth an estimated $35 billion per year, uses the disease nomenclature in a vast majority of its ads and slogans. Despite consistently lower success rates, that's not likely to stop because it pulls in the cash.